This week on The Loud Quiet, is your spring break mode on, off, or paused?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Loud Quiet. Today we thought we'd talk about spring break. It's spring break season in Texas. Are you traveling somewhere right now on spring break? Maybe you're tuning in
Ooh,
while you're on
yeah.
your spring break vacation. Come on over to the Facebook group, The Loud Quiet, Empty Nest Living. Tell us where you're at for spring break. Tell us where you're going for spring break.
Put the pictures. Make us all jealous of where you are and make us wish that we were there.
So that's what we thought we'd talk about today is reminisce kind of the three stages, if you want to say, of spring breaks that we have experienced.
Yeah, as we were thinking about, and especially those of y'all that listened to last week's episode, right? We've got to take a break. We've got to just enjoy life and talk about the enjoyment part of life.
So we thought we would start with our younger ages and going into our college years of spring break.
Before we became a couple and moved on from there. Every spring break thought before then.
Well, yeah, because once you were a couple pre-children, you were working, so you didn't get to have spring break. But up until those college graduation,
There's probably some folks listening going, yeah, spring break, that sounds nice.
Tanner even was dealing with that a little bit this year because he is still in school, but most of his friends are not. And so
Spring
they're
break's
like,
not relevant.
I'm working, dude.
Well, all right, Clancy, what's some of the memories of your childhood, high school? What was spring break like for you in that phase?
Childhood, I remember a lot of because of my dad's job. We would go along with him to visit some of his stores. My dad worked for J.C. Penney for
Decades.
many, many, many years. And so we would tag along with him on some of these amazing trips to Borger.
Oh, this is Borger.
Yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that was spring break.
and I mean, I still remember my mom just being like, we were there on a weekday and nothing was open. The bowling alley wasn't open. The movie theater wasn't open during the day. So we went to a park. I mean, it was just
Spring break in the park.
yes. When we lived in Lubbock, we would go to Cloudcroft or other places with our close family friends. Those are some of the things that I remember from younger childhood.
Was Borger the green hair story?
It wasn't Borger, but it was one of the cities, and I can't ever remember which one. Yes, the pool dyed my hair green. Yeah, that was fun. And one of them, I left my pink blanket. That's another story.
Oh, no. What happened with the pink blanket?
That was my blanket that my mom said she was going to make my wedding dress out of because I still had it up until I was much older. And we left it at one of the hotels. And you and Tegan or you and Tanner drove back through that town, and my mom said, could you stop by the hotel and see if they have the pink blanket?
We did not stop by and get the pink blanket. And
No.
while I'm sure that was traumatic for you, I'm actually quite thankful that I did not see you coming down the aisle in a pink blanket.
Yes.
Your wedding dress was beautiful as is. No pink blanket needed.
So what were some of the ones that you remember as a
So
child?
childhood was a lot of skiing. My dad had been a skier all his life. When he was stationed in Europe, he skied in Europe. His good friends, when they were in medical school together, lived in Salt Lake City. What do you do in Salt Lake City? You ski. So for me growing up, I mostly have memories of spring break going skiing. Always have loved skiing. And then that's what our church group would do in Austin is we would every spring break load up a bus and go skiing.
You and I were talking about this on the way to church the other day. That's how I got introduced to skiing, was through my church youth group
Yeah.
ski trip.
Yeah.
And yes, I did that even in San Antonio, and when we moved to Plano, we still did the church ski trip. And you and I were saying, that was the one church trip that wasn't really focused on church. I'm sure we did some devotional or something, but it was really, this is the ski trip. And we stayed co-ed boys and girls in condos. And we were in we weren't sharing a room, but we were in a shared condo together. We cooked dinner. That's where I learned
Oh
you
my
threw the
gosh.
spaghetti on the, oh yeah, and no adult chaperone.
What? How on earth was there not all sorts of naughtiness going on that? You put a bunch of hormonal
Well, I don't
teenagers in
know.
a room
Maybe there
together?
was.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it was the
I'm
other
not here
condo.
to air anyone's dirty laundry on the.
So ours was not co-ed. Now, obviously, in the same building, there'd be folks, and so you were near girls. There were chaperones on the trip, but not in the rooms.
Right.
And so one year, a buddy and I, I'm not going to name names here because we weren't real smart. We were at Breckenridge, and we said, we want to try dipping. We want to try tobacco. I think it was 8th grade. And so we went to the Quickie Mart there in Breckenridge and got Skull Bandits in the wintergreen flavor. We thought we were the coolest people ever. We brought those bandits back, and we're sitting there, and everybody's kind of enjoying each other. And oh man, this feels good. Oh, that's awesome. That's really. And then suddenly it hit, and all of us got violently ill. Spending the entire evening, I remember falling asleep next to the toilet with my arm raised on the toilet bowl and only being woken when another person had to use said bowl. It was one of the worst experiences ever, all on a church ski trip. It took me decades, and I'm not exaggerating, it took me decades to be able not just to try wintergreen gum, to be around the smell of wintergreen. It still kind of makes me a little bit queasy.
It is crazy to think that we had so much freedom on ski trip.
This is spring break woohoo, absolutely.
Turns out she is going to Daytona for spring break. Woohoo! That means wet T-shirt contest, guys doing shots off of girls' bodies, waking up next to people you don't even know.
And she is going to have a great time. Is she staying at the Hotel Corona?
You know the hotels?
Sure, I was there. Spring break 81. Whee!
College, I did a trip to Chicago. The college spring breaks were a little crazy.
College, that's spring break woohoo, right? I mean, that's college.
And then by my last year of college, I had met you. There were definitely some fun college spring breaks.
Yeah, they were absolutely fun. What I remember about the college age of, along with the partying, there was definitely that. I think that was my freshman year was the first ever year that we planned a vacation. It wasn't an organization planned it for us. It wasn't the parents planned it. There was a group of friends of ours freshman year that got a home down in Hilton Head. And how do we find a home? How do we get ourselves there? How do we all of that? That one thing of independence was actually spring break travel planning.
And what's so interesting about that is, yes, we planned, my friend and I planned our trip to Chicago. We found our hotel, which I would never let my child stay at. But, for us, you had to get the book. You had to find a
AAA
book.
guide.
Yes, and find things. Whereas now these kids just tap, tap, tap. They can book flights, book hotel, book Airbnb, all just sitting in, 15 minutes. It took us weeks to really plan out. We had to call the airline because you couldn't get online.
There was no online,
So all the planning that we had to do to be able to
and that's when
go
it
on
kicked
our
in.
spring break.
That was the first time you really got a chance to do that.
And we took that into our family once we had kids, because you don't really think about spring break until you have kids who are on spring break.
Right.
I think one year we went to San Antonio and did Six Flags, because I see that picture. Tegan has her St. Patrick's Day
Fiesta,
shirt on.
Texas, right?
Fiesta, Texas, yes. We did SeaWorld, I think, in that same
That's
trip.
probably the picture, one of my favorite pictures of them, where they're smiling, leaned back on the
and they
river
have
walk
on
when we
their-
were sitting at Paisanos right there against the water.
Oh, yeah. That's from that trip, too. Or another one. We did San Antonio quite often because we would go to Austin and then just bip down from there and stay a couple of days.
I think that was a lot of it was what was influenced on how can you get them back to grandparents and be able to get that time to have them get access to them.
Those things were fun to do when they were younger, and they could handle travel. Once they got a little older, then we added in the ski trips, and we did multiple years of ski trips that we drove to
Yeah.
New Mexico or Colorado.
Those were not spring break woohoos. That was spring vacation.
She's going to Florida for a spring vacation.
Wait a minute, is she going for spring vacation or is she going for spring break?
What's the difference?
Well, spring vacation, you're doing nice things with your grandparents. Spring break, you're doing frat guys.
We still enjoy ourselves when we're with our kids. At that age, it is a little harder because you're having to carry 2 sets of skis until they get old enough to carry their own.
As you started to say, we still had fun. I think that's something I had never thought about spring break until just now when you're doing that with your kids, is when you go on vacation with your kids, they get to see their parents in a different light. Because we are more relaxed. There are things that we probably allow them to do because you're on vacation. There's different desserts, or there's different foods, or we're going out to eat at restaurants, or we're just probably, even to the kids' eyes, maybe just more laid back. And there's an element of that spring break or just vacations in general that maybe help the kids realize, oh, wait, my parents are human.
I would say, though, with the ski trips, they are relaxing because you do, but I mean, they are work too. You're up at the crack because you want to get out there for the lifts and get going.
Guilty.
Well, everyone was. I think by the last ski trip we did, Tanner and I were like, we'll catch up with you and Tegan later. Y'all can get out at the crack and then we'll meet you on the slope somewhere. You could also be like, okay, we'll meet you down at the bottom. We know the mountain, especially when you've gone back to the same place a few times. So you did know that, okay, eventually someone will make themselves down to the après-ski area.
Yeah. I think when you were saying about how you and Tanner were going off, I think it's another thing that these spring break trips teach the family, and that is it's okay to be a unified family, and it's okay to be independent, and it's okay if the family breaks into units to do things. Being able to see it's okay if Rick and Tegan, or Dad and Tegan, go ski from 8:30 to 4 o'clock, and you and Tanner, hey, let's try this cross-country skiing thing, because y'all did that one day. And it doesn't break the family apart. It's just, that's how a family lives and operates. And these spring break trips really help teach that.
After we morphed out of the ski trips, because then as they got a little older, and especially once Tanner got older, then we used spring break somewhat to do some college tours. Trips. We did New York, I think 3 or 4 years in a row, because some of the colleges that he was looking at were in that area. And then Tegan really grew to love New York. And so we would go back with her. Even when Tanner's senior year, he went off on his own and they went to London. That was COVID year.
It's about the year that Tegan broke Broadway.
Yeah.
It's a real story.
And Tanner might have been stranded in London. I think we literally did New York 3 or 4 years in a row, even up until her last year or first year of college. She wanted to go back to New York. And I love New York.
Listen to all these fancy trips that we've done. There also were some spring breaks that were pretty lean. There were times that were lean, and we still found a way to have a family spring break at that era.
And it was one time we went to the Embassy Suites in Frisco because we probably had points. And I still remember we went and ate at Campese's, and that was when Duke lost and you were just in a horrible mood, because also in tandem with spring break is March Madness. So from here on out, I don't have any control over the TV watching for the next few weeks.
No, you do not. And that is an accepted part of this relationship.
But yeah, there are times that you can't do things, so you just make the best of what you have. When the kids were younger, and even now, they would be, let's go get ice cream. Let's go, anything is special to them that's out of the
Well,
ordinary.
And let's be, to a kid, the Embassy Suites is a magical place. It's,
Hey,
it's a magical
and
place to be as an adult.
It's for the parents,
They've
too.
got a happy hour that involves free booze.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic...
They still have that.
Different places still do.
I know.
Yeah, they got the free... it's usually like 2 coupon.
That's where I love to stay with my family growing up, and we usually stayed in those because they had the 2 rooms,
That's
and
so
we
magical
had
to the
multiple
kids.
kids. And I loved getting a Shirley Temple down at that bar. I remember the first times we stayed there, I was like, oh my gosh, this place is amazing. You can just
It's a dream for families, and it's a dream for kids. So for those of you that know the Embassy Suites, please put us in touch with them, and we'll be happy to run a sponsorship with them. Yeah, and as we're talking about the Embassy Suites, we did mention, you've got the 2 rooms there, and that was always nice. But there came that point that we realized we're going to have to start getting 2 hotel rooms.
Yes.
We came to that realization that if not that, either Airbnb, a lot of our travels have involved Airbnbs because of that multiple room. I'm curious, when did y'all come to that realization that you needed to have 2 rooms, parents and kids? Or in some cases, you might need parents and kids and kids and kids, whatever the size of the family is. What was it that drove you to realize, hey, we're going to have to no longer get to stay in the same room together? Put that out on the Facebook group, The Loud, Quiet, Empty Nest Living.
And I'll tell you what ours was.
Hit me.
Tanner got too big to be in, because they used to share a bed for a long time, and then he got too big. So we had to add a room. It's fun to reminisce about the trips that we did with our families and then with our family and children. And now we're in that stage that we don't have to travel on spring break. Although as I'm sitting here talking about New York, I'm like, God, I'm really itching to go to New York.
We need to talk about that. I got an idea.
Oh, okay. All right. There you go. Something
There may be a
off the
future
cuff
episode. But that actually, that was clearly not planned. That's the point of travel on spring break, air quotes here, in the empty nest, is we can go when we want to go. That flexibility, I think, gets felt at its highest point in the empty nest around these kind of periods. We truly could pick up and just go. We are going to my Duke reunion without having to really worry about anything. We added a day on the back end of that to go up and do a day trip to Chicago. Now, it's work related. Still, it's something that we can do because the empty nest has that flexibility.
I actually have been seeing people posting, and this year it's weird. I'm not seeing as many posts about their trips. Now, that could also be that our kids are now in the college years and they have their own things going on. But at first I was like, I'm kind of sad that I'm not on a trip. But then I was like, I'm kind of glad I'm not on a trip because we have been traveling and we are about to go into a massive amount of traveling. And so it's kind of nice just to be here. And like you said, we can pick and choose now when we want to go. What a gift in the empty nest that you can travel when you want to travel.
It's interesting how a lot of the travel periods, let's take summer, for example. It's when school is not in session. Mm-hmm. Europe in summer sucks. It's hot. It's crowded. It's expensive. And I use the word sucks very loosely there. Europe anytime is amazing. I love being there.
And we have been there multiple times in the summer. So because we had to.
And it's crowded. And it's expensive. We've got a trip coming up here to Germany planned to go see your brother and his wife. I have been floored by how inexpensive flights are, relatively. How available and inexpensive hotels are. That's what's really catching me off guard. I've looked at some really nice properties that it's more expensive for us to stay at the Eddy in Tucson than the Waldorf in Berlin. And I'm floored by what I'm seeing.
Yeah, it's nice. That is definitely an advantage to being in the empty nest. And, at first we did want our kids to go on this trip with us, but we gave up on waiting for them to plan their summer schedules. We're like, forget it. We're going to go. And have a good time. And then we're doing another trip with them at the end of the summer. So, yeah, it is really nice that we can now just go when we want to go. That is a blessing of the empty nest, and I hope all of you are finding that a blessing as well. Another blessing that I don't know if everyone would see it as a blessing, but I do. Our oldest Tanner, who usually is the one who always has a spring break trip planned and has, like I said, since his senior year of high school. This year with law school, and they were all still doing interviews and those kind of things on spring break, everybody just kind of went back to their homes, I think, to just relax, have mom cook some food for them. So he came home this week, and it's been nice, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it because all y'all been talking about is sitting on the couch watching March Madness.
I'm sorry, why are you using past tense? He came home Tuesday. I'm already enjoying it because I got to have lasagna on
Yes.
Wednesday night because he wanted lasagna when he came home. So I get the beneficiary of Mama's home cooking. You cook wonderfully, but you choose healthier options. When he's home, I get to be bad, and I like it. He's downstairs right now watching games that I cannot wait to get back and watch myself. What's some of your favorite spring break memories of any of those phases? Or even more specifically, what are you optimistic and hopeful about doing spring break and just simply traveling in the empty nest, knowing that maybe you're not tied to spring break? What does spring break mean to you now that you're in the empty nest? Share that on the Facebook group, The Loud, Quiet, Empty Nest Living. And maybe we're going to find some new ideas from you on where to go and where to travel next.
I'd actually like to know too, for those of you who have grandkids, do you get to go? Are you invited on spring break trips? Are you not? I would like to know if any of you that do have grandkids, are you included? Because I would like to be included when my children have children.
Well, I hope that y'all have enjoyed this as you are on either your road trip or you're listening to this in your flight, or you are, well, just out for a run because you had the time and space to do so on spring break. It was certainly fun to share these spring break stories with you, Clancy, and walk down the memory lane here in The Loud Quiet.